Hello, and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
I used spreadsheets for 15 years.
Oh my God, did you?
I know. But as my business grew, I grew out of the spreadsheets.
Yes.
And it got harder to sort of keep on top of all my invoicing and quoting and things like that. And Rounded was the accounting software that finally converted me. And it helped simplify my taxes and also just let me take ownership of what goes on in my freelance business. And I love that I've got visibility over my finances, so I can see what's happening with my cash flow and all the other insights that are on the dashboard.
I know, the dashboard is so cool. I love a good pie chart, and I love the whole thing because it makes it so much easier to work it out.
Yeah.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can save 20% on any annual Rounded plan, even if you're an existing customer. So see the show notes for details. So, Rachel, do you remember some of the great writers you've had the privilege to edit?
Yes, definitely. I think there's really something special about coming across a writer who has a beautiful way with words. And I know that today's guest is someone whose writing you've edited and also admired for a long time now.
Yes, it's Rachelle Unreich. As well as being a long-term freelance journalist, she's written a powerful memoir of her mother's life and her mother's experience as a Holocaust survivor.
Wow. Well, I am midway through the book and saw Rachelle at the Sydney Writers' Festival recently. So I'm so interested for this chat. Why don't you read her bio and we'll get her into the hot seat?
I'd love to. Rachelle Unreich started her journalism career when she was completing her arts law degrees at Monash University. In addition to studying writing at UCLA, she's lived in New York, Los Angeles, Sydney, and Melbourne. She's been a journalist for 38 years, writing cover stories for The Age, Harper's Bazaar, Marie Claire, Rolling Stone, and others, and has had regular columns in Sydney Morning Herald, the Herald Sun, and Elle magazine, which is where I edited her columns. Her work has appeared extensively in Australia, the US, the UK, and Southeast Asia. And her new book, A Brilliant Life, which is what we've been talking about, is about her mother's story of surviving the Holocaust, has been published in 10 countries and was shortlisted for the Age Book of the Year. So amazing.
Amazing. Welcome, Rachelle. We are so excited to have you.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Lynne. I couldn't be more excited to be here.
Oh, it's so good. And congrats on the book. It's so good.
It is.
So beautiful. Your mother's mirror story is so powerful and compelling. It was, I have to say, a bit tough to read in places, but so amazingly, it was still quite uplifting and inspiring. How does it feel having it out in the world?
It's a little strange, I've got to say, because since the book is also about me and not just my mother, it's a little weird to know that I'm being read about in so many places around the world. You know, I'll hear from readers from Switzerland or the Midwest in America or Canada, and that is really strange. But more than that, I feel like my mother's out in the world, even more than the book. I wrote it because I knew she had a really important legacy, not just her historical legacy of surviving the Holocaust, where she was in 4 concentration camps at the age of 17, and I wanted to record that. But I also really wanted to impart who she was in the world and how she lived, how you can not just survive trauma, but actually live joyfully afterwards. And so to put that out in the world, that is what really feels incredible. And I hear from people all the time who say her outlook has changed them. I'll hear from people going through cancer treatments or dealing with their parents in palliative care, or they've just lost their parents. And to think that her message can reach all those different people, that feels really special. It's, there's a Jewish saying that you say when somebody dies, and it's, may their memory be a blessing. And what that means is when somebody has died, it's incumbent on you, the living, to live as they would have and carry on their good deeds So it's as if they are still really living and their memory really is a blessing. And that's how I feel this book is doing. People talk to me about her. They write me letters about my mother Mira, and that's incredible.
It's
We were
amazing.
talking off air a little bit about how I saw you recently at the Sydney Writers Festival on the More Than Memoir panel. And my mum has Alzheimer's. I don't know if I've mentioned that on the podcast before, but I've written a little bit about her in magazines. But your book has really made me think, I have to sit down with her and interview her properly, because these stories, they kind of that they end with those people, don't they? And I don't know, it's made me think how important it is to bring their story out and to have it for future generations to read and all of that. And I was reading about how you started sort of interviewing her and started the story while she was actually dying. And what was that process like? That must have been incredibly hard.
Well, and I agree with you. I tell everybody to interview their parents and
Yeah.
sit down with them, because it can actually be an incredibly intimate time and you can learn things you do not realize will tell you about yourself as well. That it sort of fits together this whole jigsaw puzzle piece of your psychology. But when I interviewed her, I did it because she'd lost so much of who she was in the last 6 months of her illness. She was almost unrecognizable as my mother in many ways. Her demeanor changed, the way she looked changed. She usually had this really sing-song voice where she'd greet me with, "Hello, darling Rachi." And then even that changed to this monotone. And so I just really interviewed her to distract her. It was my brother's suggestion. And what I didn't realize was what it would open up. I didn't realize how much I didn't know about her. There was an incredible amount of beauty in that time as well. It was really intimate. So I didn't find that part hard. I found that really rewarding. Writing about it afterwards and remembering her illness was a bit difficult. But more than that, what I felt was that I wanted to write my way out of grief. I felt so lost after she was gone, and I really didn't know what to do with that level of grief. And writing is what I turned to work things out. And I really felt like I could transform the ugliness of the end of her illness, that deep-seated feeling of mourning, into one of connection as I was writing it. That felt really special.
Oh, that's so nice, because hopefully, and this is what I felt when I read the book, it encapsulated your mother's spirit and the way she was, not the way she became when she got ill. So hopefully that is in your memories, that wonderful thing about her is preserved too. I think that's really good. And I really loved your portrayal of Jewish culture and traditions too. I thought that was really beautiful. And the things, and maybe part of what held your mother together during her time in the camps, and despite losing most of her family, which was devastating. Is that a big part of your life too, or did you have to do a lot of research to? I noticed you had a rabbi on tap to check some of the things.
I did. I mean, being Jewish is an integral part of my identity. But that said, I'm not as observant a Jew as I might be. So there were certainly things I had to check. When I went back and wrote about, let's say, the mikveh experience in Czechoslovakia when my mother was young, that was the ritual bathhouse that Jewish people had to go to at different times of their lives. I've only once been to a mikveh, and that was before my wedding. And so I didn't know exactly what all the rules were around that, and I needed to research that. But what I didn't need to research was the way we celebrated festivals and the feeling that was imbued in my family with those celebrations, and the sense of identity I've had, and the guidance that Judaism has given me. That was really important to me to put in there, because it's been such a beautiful religion for me. And I think so many people don't know about it. They don't know a Jewish person well. They don't really know what being Jewish is all about. There are so many different types of ways people observe Judaism. And I just wanted to deconstruct that a little bit and make it more accessible, because of course, Jewish people have been persecuted for many, many centuries. And I think to combat that, you have to try and allow people in and let them see what it's really all about. There has to be understanding there.
Mm.
I wanted to go back a bit to that connection because I think the book, although it's about your mother and you were mentioning it's about you as well, and there's a beautiful connection between the two of you. There's a part where I think you put a letter in that you wrote to her about how children choose their parents and you must have been beating all the other parents, aside to get to her. I remember when I was reading that, I thought, I wonder, like, just how that must have been such a touching and poignant thing for her to read. Do you remember when you gave that to her and what it was like?
I don't remember that one specifically, but I know that we were both effusive in expressing how we felt about one another. And I've come to realize how important that is. Just that really simple thing of telling someone how you feel about them in a really expansive way really has taught me a lot. But I felt such a connection with her in so many ways, and she guided me through so much. So hopefully my words meant something to her, but her words meant so much to me even more. There's a part in the book where I write that she gives me a card one year on my birthday, and it's when I've just separated from my husband and things are feeling pretty bleak. And she writes in the middle of this very long, elaborate birthday greeting, "Don't give up hope." And then in all caps, "The happiness is near!" exclamation mark. And when I read that, I kind of dismissed it. I thought, well, how do you know the happiness is near? You're not a psychic. And it really wasn't until I pieced together all the artifacts of my relationship with her when I was writing this book. And by that stage, I knew her better, really. I had done all these interviews with her. I'd spoken to my siblings about their experiences with her. And I realized what she meant by the happiness is near. And that is that the happiness is near because it is always near. It is always hovering around you, just waiting to be found. And I really think that she always felt that no matter how unfathomable the darkness, no matter how terrible and dark things looked, you had to believe that there was light beneath. That was the first point. And if you believed it, you could then have the courage to reach for it. There was really an element to her of faith and spirituality in the world that taught me so much. And a lot of what I tried to do in the book was capture that too. I felt all these strange things happen after her death in my life, and she certainly experienced them after her mother was killed in her life. And that's part of this too, this bond that I can't explain. There are incidents in the book that I can't explain about serendipity and coincidence and the woo-woo of it all. But it has something to do with this reach of my mother and the bond between us, I'm sure.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Because her character and spirit really shine. I think there's a point where she really reaches a low ebb, and it's sort of on just about the fourth camp or something, and or maybe after the camps, and she's walking back to Czechoslovakia, which is unimaginable anyway. And I just love that positivity. I mean, it's hard from where we're sitting to understand what she would went through. I mean, you get a wonderful picture of it, but it's just so grueling. Was it something you really wanted to share about her, that resilience?
Definitely, because I think that resilience and strength proved that other people can find that in themselves as well. I think it's inherent in some people, but I think it could be learnt as well. And to me, the most incredible thing was when she did her first interview for the Melbourne Holocaust Museum, and she had to go through 2.5 hours or so of really difficult testimony. She'd been in 4 camps, including Auschwitz. She was just 17 years old when she was taken to camp. Her father had been shot in front of her, her mother killed. She'd just seen so many brutal and terrible, unimaginable horrors. And then after reciting all these things, the interviewer said to her at the end, just kind of a throwaway line, "Is there anything you want to add? Anything you've learned?" And she barely paused for a beat when she said, "In the Holocaust, I learned about the goodness of people." And
Wow.
hearing her recite all of that, you think, how can you possibly say that? You've seen the absolute worst cruelty that man has to offer, and you've learned about the goodness. But It has something to do with her focus and her observance, I think, that she chose not to focus on the people that tried to end her life in unimaginable ways. She instead concentrated on those people, and there were so many Jewish and non-Jewish people who put themselves at risk, who intervened, who did both small acts of kindness and the most incredibly large ones to help her, save her, keep her going. And there's something about that that characterized her outlook, that in her life she looked forward and she observed everything, but the thing she focused on was the good.
Wow.
Beautiful. I would love to know how many interviews that you did with her in total, and then how you brought all of that together with the research that you did as well. Did you have a specific process, or did it just come together organically? How did it all work?
With the interviews with her, I just threw out questions from her. I slightly started in a chronological way. Like, I think one of my first questions was, tell me what your childhood was like. But we went back and forth, and I didn't try to bring her back in. Everything was valuable. So I just threw questions at her and we meandered off course. Sometimes they were short, sometimes they were longer. I think we did about 8 interviews in all that I recorded on my phone. And then I had other bits that I cobbled together. So I managed to track down an interview she'd done when she took part in a cookbook. And I had recordings of her when she'd spoken about the Holocaust at my kids' school. I had the testimony she did for the museum. And also the author Elliot Perlman interviewed her extensively for 10 hours because he knew me and her and thought it was really important to get her Holocaust experiences down as thoroughly as possible. So I didn't really have a way of collaborating them all. I transcribed them all. And when I started writing, I'd really fallen into a trap when I had tried to plan it. It just didn't work. I lost inspiration whenever I looked at it on the page. I thought, this is terrible, couldn't start. And so one day when I did decide to start and felt motivated because I'd been speaking to my neighbour about the word legacy, and that word legacy just hummed and hummed in my brain until I sat at my computer. I just started at the beginning. I looked at all the stuff that had to do with her early life, and I started there. Although before then I started with really the end of her life because, as I said, one of the things I wanted to do was write my way out of grief. And that was really the foremost in my mind, the end of her days. I wanted to start with that, and I more or less did.
It's interesting because I guess part of that is you called it A Brilliant Life, and yet it's such a sad story. And I love that you had this sort of positive tone that reflects that resilience. What has the feedback been from readers of the book?
I love hearing from readers. It's my favorite thing. I'm constantly checking my Facebook messages and Instagram. And they've taken her as their own. They have really felt moved by her. And they say she's helped them in so many ways. I've heard from a breast cancer patient who said that when she's going through radiation, she remembers something my mother Mira said, which is, when I said to her, how did you even keep going forward? How did you not just collapse in a heap? And she said, I knew that was in the past and I had a future to live. And this patient going through radiation said that she kept saying that to herself as she was going through radiation, that she knows that one day that's going to be in the past. I heard from a young girl in America who said, you've given me a new and profound interest in Judaism, which was so sweet. And I've heard from people who feel closer to their parents as a result. I've heard from people who've had fraught relationships with their mothers and didn't experience this and somehow feel the bond that I did, and that's helped ease some kind of pain. It's actually remarkable to hear. And I've heard from people who've known my mother, which is really amazing, or people who had similar experiences with their own parents.
Wow.
Amazing. What was the process like when you came to publish? Did you have an agent, or did you sort of shop it around yourself? How did that all happen?
I'm so nervous about telling this story because it's going to sound really easy, but I have to say, my mother was around this whole process. And so what I really think was that she aided this whole thing, because I sat down to write this book in COVID lockdown number 6. I had all the time in the world, and I sat down every day from 8 in the morning till about midnight, 7 days a week. I think I took off a Saturday night and had the first draft of the book in 6 weeks. And at around the 3 week mark, I started feeling like I had something special. And I liken it to when you meet someone who you think in the really back of your head might be the one, and it feels so crazy to think that you don't want to share it. You keep it bottled up for a while, and that's how I felt. But I also wanted to find out if that was valid to feel that way. And I reached out to someone who I'd met once who was in publishing and asked her if she would read it. And I still remember that as being one of the big high points of this book. She worked for a publishing company that had a UK arm. And when she called me back, she said, I'm not bringing this to my publisher. We're too small for you. This is global. You need an agent. And that was like crazy talk. That's like your Kate Moss being spotted by an agent saying, we're going to put you on the cover of the Face magazine. Those of you who grew up when I did will get that reference.
Yes.
And so another act of serendipity, and this book is all about those weird connections in the world. I thought, well, I don't know any agents. Maybe I've befriended an agent once on LinkedIn, because often if I see somebody I might request, or if they've requested me, I accept. And sure enough, there was not just an agent, but a super agent at Curtis Brown, which is a fabulous agency, one of the biggest in the world, Tara Wynne in Sydney. And so I wrote to Tara and asked her if she would look at what I'd written, and she said yes. And it was really almost with her a love at first email situation. Her mother at the time was ill, and so she understood what I was going through. But more than that, she was born on my mother's birthday. And there's a big thing in the book about the significance of my mother's birthday. So that really felt like we were meant to be. And she took it on and she sent it out to publishers a bit less than a year later. And I was lucky enough to have 8 offers, which was crazy. And the whole thing was completely bananas.
Wow. It is a dream story.
Yeah. Probably a lot of authors don't have that story.
I mean, I know it. It feels really crazy. And it's just like that kid in your lounge room pretending you're saying an Oscar speech when you're 8 years old, and then suddenly you're winning an Oscar. It feels like winning the lottery, really.
Yeah, amazing.
One of the things about this, the big question we ask everyone, is it possible to actually make money as an author in Australia?
Well, I have to say it has been for me, both as a journalist beforehand, and then I did get a very hefty advance for this book in Australia. And then it sold in America. HarperCollins bought it in a preempt. So that was very great. And it's since sold in other territories, the UK, and it's just got sold for its first translation. So yes, I would say yes. I think people spend so much time second guessing their abilities and second guessing what might happen. And I got a really good lesson when I met with one of the publishers that I actually didn't go with in the end, but I wanted to meet him. And he said to me, why haven't you written a book before now? And I'm 57 now. I was 56 when the book came out. And I said, I didn't think I could. And he said, who told you that? And I thought for a second and I said, I told me that. I really have found so many ways to tell myself that I wouldn't be an author, that my work wasn't good enough to be on the shelves with the authors that I admired, that writing was too big. And part of the reason I told myself that was back when I was a young journalist, people often ask as a bit of a question, when are you going to write a book? And that question, for whatever reason, held a lot of pressure for me. I felt very intimidated by that question. And I thought, I've got to come up with a line to tell people when they ask that. And so my line was a version of what I just said. Oh, I don't think I have it in me. I like the small capsule elements of a smaller story. I said that so many times that at some point, I don't know when, I started believing it.
So
And
interesting, yeah.
it's really important not to do that negative self-speak, because even though I didn't believe it when I first said it, I did by the end.
Yeah. Well, I remember from reading your columns way back in Ellen and throughout some of the newspaper columns that I've seen, you've always been a beautiful writer. So to me, it's not a big surprise. And it doesn't surprise me that your book would do so well, because you've always been, it does sound a bit gushy, doesn't it? But you've always been a great writer. But sometimes maybe as a magazine writer, we tend to put ourselves down thinking we belong in that smaller medium, when maybe you did have it in you to do the bigger piece.
And people who say good words to you and positive words of encouragement can mean so much. So when this was percolating in my head and I thought I really should write my mother's story, Theo Chapman, who's at the Australian Financial Review, and someone I had just met at that time, said to me the same thing. How come you haven't written a book yet? I think the way you write, you could have pounded out several by now. And I thought, if Theo believes that about me, maybe it's true. And you've got no idea how those tiny seeds can actually plant such an enormous tree.
Yeah. Wow.
I think that's really true. I mean, I don't know about you, Lynn. I still get that question from people. I did write a book with Pip Harry years ago, based on our advice column. And I still get it now. When are you going to write another book? When are you going to? And I feel like I have told myself that I like the smaller stories, the feature writing. I don't think I could do a whole book. And actually, I don't know when I would actually fit it in, but
Yes.
idea of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynn, what about you? You should be writing a book.
I'll think about it. I think every journalist has some sort of idea in their bottom drawer, but that doesn't necessarily mean they all need to see the light of day.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. Well, Rachelle, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about the book, but let's talk about your other writing, because you have been a journalist for many years. So who are you writing for these days? And was it something that you sort of put to the side while you worked on the book?
Yeah, it's a strange thing. I have almost known no other life than being a journalist, because I started writing and being published when I was 19 at university. And by the time I finished uni, I had a full-time writing career. So it is really strange to tell you that I have put it aside for now, that although I'm writing articles that help promote the book in some way or that are related somehow to the themes, right now I do feel it really important to write things that are positive for the Jewish community as well. I'm generally not doing that. I think being a journalist, I have an understanding that you've got to write a book, but you have to sell a book as well.
Yeah.
And so I've really given myself a year, and the book came out in November, to just go full throttle and really try to get it in front of people. And it's opened up so many doors for me. So last night I was interviewing former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg at an event at my synagogue, because he did this documentary, Never Again, the Fight Against Anti-Semitism. Now, I don't know if I would have been asked to do that and be that moderator had I not written the book. And that's already happened quite a few times. And I'll be doing some interviews at upcoming festivals. And just having that ability to go to writers' festivals, to go on podcasts, and in the same way that I would have pitched editors in the past, I'm pitching them about writing about my book in the same way, and trying to get in front of people and organizations and schools and community events, and just try to put myself forward. And no one is safe. I laugh that really no one is safe. I mean, so much so that I went to the local coffee shop one day and overheard a woman talking about the raffle that she was helping to organize for her school for Mother's Day. And I said, what about raffling off a book club for my book, and I'll come. And so that's what we're doing. She raffled it off, raised $280, and I'll have 10 women come to my late mother's house, which we've still got as a family, where I'll be hosting a book club for them.
Oh, wow. But that's very entrepreneurial of you.
Yeah.
We've talked to quite a few authors, and everyone has agreed how much you need to market your own book and put yourself out there. So it's good advice, definitely.
I just put something in the wrap-up actually about how authors are having to fund the promotion of their book so much more now than they used to. Are you finding that too, or has it been a different case because your book was so in demand, you had those 8 offers and all of that? did they throw money at the marketing of it, or have you had to sort of fund it as well? So a lot of this stuff.
I have funded some things, but I have to say that Hachette in Australia, because I did get a hefty advance, I knew that they would put a lot into it. And so my book has been on the sides of buses for Christmas. And they got a film crew to fly down from Sydney and film a book trailer, which was amazing for it. So they were unbelievable. But now that it's been quite a while since it's been published, I helped subsidize an event at my synagogue, partly to help my synagogue out, and I'll do stuff for free all the time. I send books, I buy books myself, and I send them to people all the time, and just who I think should read it and who I think will be helped. And it's not really just so self-serving, like to think, oh, I'll get more sales from this. Sometimes it is as simple as thinking, I think this person will want to read about my mother and will gain from that. And then there's just been some things that I think my mother has propelled along the way. So a really fortunate thing was that she knew Rachel Griffiths. She'd been a landlady and Rachel Griffiths had been one of her tenants. And so Rachel was really happy to do the audiobook for this. And that is beyond any marketing I could do. Yeah, people
Right.
think that's from my connections because I spent so much time interviewing celebrities, but that was my mother actually.
Oh, so interesting. Because I was going to say that you are very well connected. I follow you on Instagram, and I know we have lots of friends in common, and you're out and about, and Melbourne is, while it's still a bit of a small town, like as Sydney is. Do you think those relationships make a difference?
Absolutely. I thank God all the time that I started my career. One of my first full-time jobs was at Dolly magazine back in the early 90s. And I worked with such an incredible troop of women who have since helped me along the way. And that happened later on in life as well. So when I was an editor years later at Who Weekly, one of the juniors there was Kelly Hush, who then became the editor of Grazia and Harper's Bazaar, and for a while was an editor at the Sydney Morning Herald, and gave me jobs all along the way. Same with Marina Go, who's nurtured my career. Lisa Wilkinson interviewed me for a job that I didn't get very early on, probably in the late 80s, but she remembered me enough to put my name forward in different ways. So I always tell people, get a staff job somewhere because you'll all come up together and it will be really helpful. And then there are just some people I've reached out to and forged a connection with that way. But when you do work with editors over and over again, you all stick in the same industry for years and years and years. And gosh, I've been in this, I'm coming up to, it'll be nearly 4 decades that I've been in this game. So I'd hope that I knew a lot of people by now.
Mm. Even though you're sort of taking time off at the moment to promote the book, when you're back to your journalism work, do you find that you're often pitching or are they coming to you? Do you still pitch at all?
For a while, they were all coming to me. And I think that's why in COVID, I had such a shock when everything closed down and I suddenly didn't have any work. And now I think I'm focusing more on pitching myself, which I'd done as well. But the advantage of pitching yourself is that you write things that you're really motivated by and that you want to see in the world. And that's become more important to me as I've gotten older. And in fact, the germ of this book was an article that ran in Good Weekend. I'd done at the beginning of COVID, I thought I have got one goal, and that is to get published in Good Weekend, which was a magazine I admired so much. And I wrote to them and I said, do you have any freelance, opportunities at all? And they said, we have this one column called Reflections where we occasionally run and we will accept writing that we think is excellent. And I ended up writing a piece about my mother for that. And that really sparked not just the idea that I could write a book, but actually gave me a way in because that column was both about my mother, but about me too. And that's how the book evolved, really. So I do love pitching ideas, I think, more now. But of course, as a freelancer, you learn never to say no. So there's that as well.
Yes.
It's
Do you
definitely
think
not.
there's mistakes that we as writers make with telling stories? You've written a lot of your work is sort of storytelling rather than sort of news journalism. What can we do better, do you think?
I think you have to have a connection to the story. It's really obvious if you don't, and you have to write it in your voice. I would love to write like plenty of other authors. I'd love to write like Edith Wharton, but I can't. And if I try to, I could probably mimic the style, but you would know something was wrong when you read it. You'd know something on a visceral level. And so I think I've learnt that what my voice is, it's quite sparse, my writing. I like quite, not too long sentences often. I like a lot of punctuation, turns out. But you have to be true to that and true to subject matters that you find interesting. I've written a lot about different women's issues. I've covered a lot of entertainment stories because I love that world as well. And so I think you really have to lean into all of that, really.
So a regular question we often ask is about tech tips. Are you a tech person? And we'd love to know if there's some software that you use to write your book, or was it Word, or what did you do?
I'm almost embarrassed to say that this entire thing took place on Word, and my biggest tech innovation was to email it at every time to my partner so that I had this fear of losing it, mainly from Lily Brett. Lily Brett, the author, once lost all of a book in a house fire and wrote about it, and that has haunted me ever since. So I kept emailing it. But of course, it did get a bit messy with research and putting things into different parts of my computer, and I probably should have printed a lot more stuff out. So I do want to work on a new book, and with this very start of it, I've just subscribed to something called Scrivener, which is an app and a program where you can put your research in different folders, and I'm hoping that'll work because I can be not that organized when it comes to writing. And I guess the only other thing I use is Otter, the recording app, where it transcribes interviews as you do them. The only disadvantage of that I find is, as a journalist, when you tend to transcribe something yourself, it somehow works its way in your brain a bit differently the second time you listen to it. And so there is a downfall to that. But the good news is that with writing, you really don't need much. There are writers that will write everything longhand. I've read about writers who've written their entire books on their phone. Catherine Stedman, I think, did that. And so you need very little by way of technology, I think.
How does anyone write an entire book on a phone?
I think she's an actress who had lots of long breaks in her trailer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Did it that
yes.
way.
I think that's just come out, hasn't it? I think I've seen
Would
something about it.
would she be like, narrating it and then it was transcribing into her phone, or she be doing it on the
Yeah,
I got
it's
the
amazing.
impression she typed it out, the old
Yeah,
two-finger
Yes.
type.
it's very impressive.
So hang on, you just mentioned you're working on a new book. Can you tell us anything about it?
Well, working on it would be a stretch. I have what I learned from experience is that I can't undermine myself and say I only have one book in me. So I'm not going to say that from now on. And I think at this age, because I got into it so late, I want to take a gamble. And for me, that gamble probably looks at this point like fiction. You might speak to me in a year's time and I'll say, oh, I tossed all that and decided to do something completely different. But I am going to give it a crack. And I've got this idea that is in my mind, very early stages. Still don't know if I'm going to plan much of it before I start writing, but I'm doing the very earliest parts of research.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's exciting. Yeah. I think that brings us to the end of the show, Rachelle. That's so interesting and so lovely to chat with you today. Tell us a bit about where people can find out about you, the book, and connect with you.
I'm almost impossible to not find. I make sure I'm everywhere. I've got a website, RachelleUnreich.com, where I see messages from that, and you can see some of my articles or events where I'm appearing at. I'm pretty prolific on Instagram these days, slightly on Facebook. You'll even reach me on X. Not on TikTok much. I am on TikTok, but I don't know how it works, and my 19-year-old son refuses to make a video for me because he goes, Mum, I don't know what's going to go viral. So
Yes.
I steered clear of TikTok.
Yeah.
I think, Lynne, you and I should get on TikTok, like get the podcast on TikTok.
Yes.
No.
Another thing to worry about.
Book talkers out there, please find me.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for such a great chat. I feel very inspired now to give up the rest of my afternoon and go and finish your book.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
all I want to do.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Thanks, Lynn. It's so gorgeous talking to both of you. Women I admire as well as want to chat to.
Thank you. We'll put everything in our show notes so you can find out where to find Rachelle, and we'll see you all next week.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group, or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.